Kentucky's Voice Television, formerly known as the station, but we're now calling it Kentucky's Voice TV. And I'm your host, Tom Fallbush, and we have our co-host, Bob Scott, Jim Waters, there we go on the screen, and Bob Scott, who is with us via Skype. And so today we're going to talk about the election, the presidential election, and how, just where we're at, just our comments, our thoughts about the race. There's been a whole lot of going on, a lot of real dramatic events and twists and turns, and just some things that really need to be commented on from us, from a local perspective. And so, number one being, I wish the Democrats would stop trying to kill President Trump. Okay, it may be a little, strong to say that, but let's face it, we've got a lot of radical leftists that are trying to kill President Trump, and that needs to stop, and that needs to stop now. And so we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about, what happened to Joe Biden. Suddenly he disappeared. He was the greatest candidate in the world, and suddenly he has a bad debate, and he's, the big cane comes in and he gets hooked off stage, and a coup occurs, and you get Kamala Harris put in place. And so, Jim, we're seeing a real unusual campaign cycle here, and it's getting a bit. Almost a third world or banana republic on some level. It's like, can we even actually execute a real campaign like we did in the past, or are we going to shoot a way out of it or have coups?
Well, that's the whole purpose of a primary is to put a candidate through a process whereby they are hired or not, and that's what we're missing here with Kamala Harris.
Right.
At the risk of sounding partisan, I don't mean this to be partisan. I would say this about either party's candidate, but the fact is Kamala Harris has never gotten a single vote in a presidential primary, which the primaries are designed to. They're rough and tough, and it's politics designed to weed out and to expose, if you will, real positions and how a person will handle governing under pressure. And we haven't seen that from her. And it's ironic that the party that talks about saving our democracy from Donald Trump has actually bypassed that democracy altogether. And you can say what you want about Trump, but when he first ran, how many were there? Like 13 candidates.
Right.
Nobody thought he would win, but it was in the primary process that he showed himself to be the candidate that Republicans would choose. So we haven't seen that, and yet, ironically, Kamala Harris and her party talk about saving our democracy, and yet they're ignoring it altogether. So I find that to be pretty serious and something we should be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I saw some sort of post yesterday, I think by Elon Musk on Twitter. It was basically saying, almost describing Kamala as like an employee. And I was trying to find it so I can read it, but it was basically saying, hey, we're having a problem with an employee. We hired her 3.5 years ago. She never really showed up to work, and no one really liked her. And then just recently she got her boss fired, and so now she wants a promotion. Yeah. And so what do we do in this situation?
Well, it's ironic. It's her employees that have worked for her that don't want to work for her. They've had like 90-some% turnover.
Exactly.
There is no record here of success in any form. Yeah. And then for her to say we're going to have a new start, and like you said, she's been in there, and Trump has been pounding away on this, and I think he's right to do that. To say you've been in there for 3.5 years, you can't separate yourself from this record. Right. And that a vote will come down to, I think, whether people associate her with that record, and I think that's a smart strategy by the Republicans. But politics is so divisive. It's but this is the way it's played, and this is the way it happens. But I think our founders would turn over in their grave if they knew that we had a person on the cusp of becoming president who had not been tested by the primary process.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and let me add in real quick. Back in 2020, when she ran in the Democratic primary, she was quickly exposed in that process. Tulsi Gabbard absolutely chewed her up and spit her out in a debate. And I think, as I recall, she got less than 1% support, at that time. So she really had to drop out of the race back then, completely disgraced.
before she ever got a single vote. I mean,
Yes.
it's truly amazing that this
that's
could happen.
correct.
But I think this is what Donald Trump's appeal is, even to people that may not like his personality, but he shakes up and disrupts the establishment of both parties.
Right.
And he's really caused this to happen in a way.
Right.
And if he can win this election, I think it will send a message that you can't bypass the democratic process and be successful at that level of politics.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. And we also have this interesting dynamic of, we've got about, well, today we're shooting this, we got about 40 days left until the election. And it seems like there's a ramping up of tensions around the world, from a security standpoint. I mean, you've got Israel about to invade Lebanon. They've already been, fighting in Gaza now for over a year, and of course the Ukraine-Russia war that's ongoing, and of course China's, what China's doing in the South China Sea is just borderline. They're going to start a war any day now. If you watch any of these videos of the Chinese Coast Guard basically ramming into Filipino ships that are trying to resupply their military on these islands, on these disputed islands, it's getting really rough. I mean, they're actually getting out there with axes and batons. One Filipino SEAL team member got his finger cut off by a Chinese Coast Guardman with an axe, and so they're basically having melee combat, on the open seas. How long is it going to take before somebody brings out a gun and says, "I'm tired of this. We're sinking your ship," and so we're this close to having a war in the South China Sea, and so. And our enemies see that we have a very weak president. Putin saw that. That's why he invaded Ukraine, because now's our time. Look at Afghanistan. Now's our time to invade. So our enemies see that. Our adversaries see that, and they see that also that maybe Trump has a pretty good chance of winning this election. So they've got a window now, just a few months, to try to do some things while America is still in disarray. And so I think we're entering a very, very dangerous time. And so, yeah.
Well, I think you're right. And it's, when America's strong, it discourages war.
Yeah.
And, all of these protesters out there talking about how they don't want war and violence, the best way to achieve that is to be so strong as a nation that not only is it pretty clear we would be winners in a outright military conflict, but also we carry a bigger stick with other nations.
Right.
And so we have more success diplomatically when we're strong. The movie Reagan just came out. I would encourage everyone to see it. I was prepared to be disappointed because, it's so tough to pull this off, but Dennis Quaid has pulled off, portraying this very heroic figure.
Yeah.
But, look at what Reagan did with the Soviet Union, and really without even firing a shot. And that's the point is it was peace through strength.
Right.
And yet we have a bunch of folks in Washington now that they either ignore that or don't want that, or I don't know what their motives are. And yet we have a bunch of folks in Washington now that they either ignore that or don't want that, or I don't know what their motives are, but they certainly aren't portraying strength. I don't think anybody in their right mind, any reasonable American, would think they're portraying a strong America.
Right.
And there are people who don't care. There are people living in this country who hate this country.
Right.
So they're obviously, they don't, they're not bothered by that fact. So and we see more of that, by the way, too.
Yeah, and Bob, and it's a strange dynamic. To Jim's point, we have a lot of folks on the left and who in the administration that are, they seem to want America to fail in a lot of these operations because they're not doing the right thing. They're not executing the right decisions. But at the same time, it seems like the war party, the hawk party, is now the Democrat Party. And so they're the ones that want to continue the Ukraine war.
It's been a complete flip-flop.
And so Jim's right. On some level, America has always been, we hate to say it, but we've always been the policeman of the world, especially since the end of World War II. We've been the superpower that's maintained the security of the seas, the oceans. And so when America's power starts receding, there creates a vacuum, and bad actors very often will step into that place. And so that's just reality. And I'm an America First guy. I'm all about, hey, let's get out of these bad wars and all these useless wars and pull back and focus on America. Let's build the wall in Mexico rather than build the wall in Ukraine. I'm all about that. At the same time, as America pulls back, bad actors start moving in. So there's a balance you got to strike.
Well, I don't think of it so much as policemen as I do defenders. Our founders wanted us to have such a strong defense as a country that we would protect the freedom that we have, both individually and as a country,
and protect our interests.
Protect our interests, and then that Trump has taken a lot of heat for really talking to both sides in this Ukraine-Russian war, and that everybody wants to. And Putin is not a good guy, but that's not the point here. The point is that we, to maintain what's in our best interest, is to have peace. And Trump carries kind of the stick, and it carries that stick. So it's when you talk about being the policeman of the world, I think that's at its core is right. But people tend to think of that as we have to be involved in everybody and solve everybody's conflict, and I don't think that's necessarily
which
true.
very often we cause as many problems in some of these conflicts
but
as
if we're
we try to solve.
If we're strong enough, and then we say, and we can bring parties to the table, then I think that's what Jefferson, in particular, he was very concerned about us becoming involved in every conflict around the world. So I think we have to be very strategic and thoughtful about that.
Bob. But
I think we have a video that I think really sums it up pretty incredibly from RFK Jr.
Yeah, see if we can keep that up.
It's RFK Jr., former Democrat, if you will, obviously part of the most recognized Democratic family in the country. He makes a very strong statement, and it's something that we all need to be concerned about.
With you, the biggest reason that I stepped out of the presidential race to endorse Donald Trump. It's an issue so big that many people don't even want to look at it. And I'm talking about the slide toward nuclear war. You might remember back in the day when Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz and all those other guys were pushing for war in Iraq, war in Syria, war in Libya, war in Iran, and full spectrum U.S. military domination across the globe. These people were known as the neocons, and they have now taken over the Democratic Party. Right now, they're the ones who are pushing for maximum confrontation with Russia. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Russia is the world's largest nuclear power. Right now, our country is providing weapons trainings and targeting information for Ukraine to strike deep into Russian territory with both infantry and with missiles. How would our country react if, say, Russia had bases on the Mexican border and was aiding Mexican armed forces to strike oil refineries and towns and nuclear power plants in Texas? If Russia gets desperate, they will use nuclear weapons, and Vladimir Putin has made this clear. That's the game that President Biden and the foreign policy establishment have been playing. They're gambling the future of our planet, and for what? For nothing. The endless wars of the neocons are bankrupting our nation. They're making us less safe at home and less safe abroad. It used to be that the Republicans were even more belligerent than the Democrats. Some of them still are, but not Donald Trump. I've had extensive conversations with him and his team. He understands the danger. He sees through the neocons now. He's going to de-escalate with Russia, and he's going to cancel the neocons' plans for wars with China and Iran, too. I take him at his word, and I'm also going to keep him to his word. I need your support to help me do that. I need you to vote Donald Trump into the White House. Let's get him elected, and let's put an end to the war machine. Thank you.
So good, so good, and that's one of the more interesting developments in this campaign is RFK, one of the major Democrat families in this country to come over and endorse Donald Trump. But what he was saying is spot on. We're really this close. As a matter of fact, I read something this just a couple days ago that this past weekend we were about a hair's breadth away from this actual scenario happening. Apparently the Russians made this very clear. They said if you launch these missiles, we're going to target this city, and this city, and we're not bluffing. And you don't want to try us because, listen, I don't blame them. They're trying to defend their country. Now, granted, they have a bad actor in Putin. I think he misstepped, and he may have some points about expansion in NATO, and I get all that. But invading a sovereign country that is not being belligerent against him is I don't know. I think he stepped over the line there. But it's a pretty complicated situation, and we're not going to push Russia out of Ukraine at this point. We're not giving the Ukrainians enough military power to push the Russians back. So if we're not going to do that, we might as well go ahead and just get peace settled right away. Otherwise, we're just going to watch more Ukrainians.
And that's something that Trump says he will do.
Exactly right.
And have it settled pretty quickly. And guess what? I believe he'll do it. We have.
Also, I think if Trump were to get elected, he'll be limited to one term. And I think there'll be lots of motivation there to really leave a legacy of peace. And I think if he gets elected, I think it begins not just during Trump's term, but I think it begins a process where people say, wait a minute, we compared to what we had during the Biden years when there was total war, on the brink of war, and that they're going to choose they're going to choose the latter.
Right.
And it may not be Trump-loving folks, but they're going to love the results of this.
I totally agree.
So-
And you brought up the point about the Reagan movie, which is an amazing movie. But, at the time, I would say we're at the foreign policy approach back then should be a little different than what we're doing now. Back then, the Cold War was going on. We had an existential threat. We had a communism which was aggressive, that basically was looking to supplant us as a way of life. We don't have that now. We've got bad actors that are adversaries. We have radical Islam, but I wouldn't say it's on the level of communism. And we have Russia. Russia is actually a pretty, all things considered, they're pretty normal culturally. They're a Christian country.
Much more so now than they used to be.
They have some sort of democracy. So what? They got a strong man. So what? Half the world has strong man. China, now that's an aggressive power that we want to try to see undermine, but it's not at the same aggressive level as, say, the Russians were in the Cold War. So this whole, we got to take it to the mat kind of approach that the Democrats are taking us with Russia. That doesn't work in this day and age. Trump's approach of building a relationship with these folks and working out win-win solutions is a way to develop peace and prosperity for the world.
But even Reagan
and it
did
even
that.
worked with North Korea.
Even Reagan did that.
Even Reagan did that. That's exactly
established
right.
relationships.
That's true.
Even though you're
That's
right,
true.
it was a
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. He started off with the hard line, said we win, they lose. But that prompted the whole conversation
He
with
said that,
Gorbachev.
but we never had a war.
That's exactly right. Yes. So that strength is necessary in order to establish your negotiating terms.
I have to say though, I was wrong about Iraq when that first happened. I was supportive of because I thought that because I miscalculated kind of some things on that. But looking back on that now, I think we should have taken a much different approach to that.
I'm still unsure how I'd because I was very supportive of Iraq, and I think Saddam was a bad actor that we had to take out. But
when you look at, like you said, over there at the balance of power, it was very important that we handle that much more carefully and nuanced than we did. Yeah.
That's right, exactly.
So,
Because basically just gave it to Iran. We basically gave Iran. Anyway, all right. So back to the election. So we're heading to a very dangerous time into this next few weeks. We feel like anything could happen from internationally. We could have World War III before the election, which would be a real tragedy. And secondly, they're trying to kill the man. I think we have another assassination attempt that was foiled that we're just learning about back in July. We basically had the Iranians come in and hiring a Pakistani national to come in and try to kill Trump. And
Tom, they say that there's at least five
more
hit teams, 3 domestic and 2 international that have been in targeting President Trump. And what's even more disgusting, if anything can be more disgusting than that, is that Rasmussen recently did a poll of Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard and many other people have been talking about it. And 28% of registered Democrats wish an assassination attempt on President Trump would be successful. 28%. That's almost 1/3 of that party. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This
Democrats.
is America.
Yeah, Democrats. You have a responsibility right now to speak out against this, against the way they're trying to attack Trump and just the language around that. Can you imagine what would happen? I mean, we're a hair's breadth away. Let me just say this, guys. It may sound like hyperbole, but we're a hair's breadth away from a real civil war, from a real civil conflict. I think you would see a fracturing of this country like you wouldn't imagine if they took out Donald Trump in an assassination attempt. I think it would or if it was a international actor, say Iran did it, that's World War III. You don't kill off our leaders. We're basically going to come in. So if that really happens, your life is totally different. This America as you knew it, your nice little Saturday nights going to Applebee's and going watching Netflix, that's done. That is done. Life is going to be totally different. It's going to be like, hold on, they just bombed Louisville. So the East Coast, all these guys from New York and D.C., they just bombed Louisville because Louisville's not. That's kind of where we're going to be on some level. Now that sounds a bit crazy and a bit out there, but on an emotional level, people understand that. And so let's pray for peace and pray for democracy to reign here, and let's make sure the election is done right, and make sure we count the ballots correctly. That's the only way. It's either bullets or ballots, folks. This is we're trying to figure out how we rule our country, and it's bullets or ballots. And so
I think
Yeah.
I think Republicans too have a responsibility to, to be clear about their policy positions and to be hearing what people, what their representative, if they're represented, hearing what their constituents are really concerned about, and really, and he talked about neocons in that video, and I agree with that. I think that it's really ironic how the Republican Party has become more of the party of peace. You know?
That's right.
But if you think about it, it really has always been that way, because we understand that it's peace through strength, and that's what Reagan said. And we see the same kind of things when Reagan took office. As he was taking the oath, those hostages were being released in Iran. And so now we see kind of the same thing on the world stage. There's a sense that if Trump gets elected, it's not going to be Biden business as usual.
That's right.
It's going to be different.
You watch. I think the hostages in Gaza will be released before Trump takes office.
That'd be really.
I mean, you watch. I mean, the parallels between Reagan
Be like
and
deja
this
vu
term,
all over again.
It really
Well,
was.
that's
the
exactly
parallels
what
are
happened
remarkable.
with
what
Jimmy
we're doing.
Carter. I guess that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right before he took office, they'd held our hostages in Iran for I think it was over a year. As I recall, and when they knew Reagan was coming into office and he meant business, guess what? Those hostages got released.
Yeah. Well, listen, we are out of time for this show. Unfortunately, we can keep.
And my comments aren't partisan. I would say this: trade issues, all that's important. It's important we have free trade. When services and products cross borders, armies don't.
Right.
And the Trump administration needs to take note of that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, this next program, next week, we're going to talk immigration, because I think that's the biggest issue in the campaign. Well, the economy, I guess, but also immigration. So
and keeping us from being blown up too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and surviving to the next day, not living in a nuclear winter. That's exactly right. Well, anyway, listen, we appreciate you joining us today. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice Television with my co-hosts Bob Scott and Jim Waters. We'll see you next week.